secrets you're sworn to keep forever. For one woman, a 67-year-old former royal maid, that was her life until now. After decades of silence, she's stepping out of the shadows to share stories about Queen Elizabeth II and the royal household that could change everything we think we know about the monarchy. Why break her vow after all these years? What hidden truths about the Queen's personality, the palace's inner workings, or the royal family's private struggles might she reveal? We're not talking about a tell-all that spills every detail, she's too careful for that. But the hints she's dropped suggest a world of tension, vulnerability, and maybe even controversy behind those grand palace doors. As the monarchy faces a world that's questioning its place, her timing couldn't be more explosive. What do these revelations mean for Queen Elizabeth's legacy? A woman who ruled for 70 years through wars, scandals, and a changing globe. And how will the royal family handle this rare peek inside their world? Stick with us as we dive into this insider's account, piecing together the life of a queen who became a global icon, and the secrets that might rewrite her story. Let's start at the beginning. A young princess who was never meant to wear the crown. Picture a young girl in 1930s London playing in a grand townhouse, unaware that history is about to thrust her into the spotlight. Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor wasn't born to be queen. Born on April 21, 1926, she was the daughter of the Duke and Duchess of York, third in line to the throne behind her uncle, Edward, Prince of Wales, and her father, Albert. The monarchy seemed set. Edward was young, charming, and expected to marry and produce heirs. But in 1936, everything flipped upside down. Edward VIII shocked the world by abdicating to marry Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee. Overnight, Elizabeth's father became King George VI, and at just 10 years old, she was the heir presumptive, the future queen in waiting. Can you imagine the weight of that shift for a child? This wasn't just a family drama, it was a national crisis. The abdication rocked Britain, with whispers of scandal echoing through the palace. Elizabeth, or Lilibet to her family, was suddenly under a microscope. Her governess, Marion Crawford, later wrote about her sense of duty even as a child, describing her as reflective and responsible beyond her years. But what did those early years feel like behind closed doors? Rumors suggest the maid, who served in the household decades later, might have heard stories from older staff about Elizabeth's private moments. Maybe her fears during the abdication, or tensions between her parents and the exiled Edward. We don't know for sure, but it's been said that young Elizabeth felt the pressure of her new role keenly, even as she was taught to hide it. By the time World War II hit, Elizabeth was a teenager and her public role grew. At 14, she gave a radio broadcast to children evacuated from London's Blitz, her voice calm and reassuring. It was a moment that won hearts, showing a princess who understood duty early. But behind the scenes, life wasn't all royal poise. The royal family stayed at Windsor Castle during the war, refusing to flee despite Luftwaffe bombings. Her mother, the Queen Mother, famously said, "The children won't go without me. I won't leave without the king. And the king will never leave." That resilience shaped Elizabeth. But it's easy to wonder what a young maid might have seen. Moments of fear, quiet family arguments, or even Elizabeth's private tears. These early years set the stage for a queen who'd face a lifetime of challenges. But as she grew, another pivotal moment loomed. Her marriage to a man who'd become her rock, and spark a few controversies of his own. What was it like for Elizabeth to navigate love and duty in a palace full of watchful eyes? Fast forward to 1947. Elizabeth, now 21, married Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, in a ceremony that captivated a war-weary Britain. Their love story wasn't without drama. Philip, a Greek prince with no wealth and sisters linked to German nobility, wasn't everyone's idea of a perfect match. Some advisors thought he wasn't good enough for the future queen. But Elizabeth was smitten, and their bond would last 73 years. Imagine the whispers in the palace kitchens. Did the staff see her steal glances at Philip, or overhear heated debates about his suitability? When her father died in 1952, Elizabeth became queen at 25, thrust into a role that demanded she balance tradition with a world craving change. Her 1953 coronation was a game changer. The first ever televised, watched by millions globally. It wasn't just a ceremony. It was a bold move to bring the monarchy into living rooms, making Elizabeth a global star. But behind the crown, she was a young woman navigating a new role. Reports claim she leaned heavily on Philip and her staff to manage the pressure. Could our maid have heard stories of Elizabeth's late-night doubts or moments of exhaustion? It's been said she sometimes paced the palace, wrestling with her new reality. The 1950s were a whirlwind. Elizabeth wasn't just a queen. She was a symbol of stability in a Britain rebuilding after war. She traveled the Commonwealth, charming leaders and crowds alike. Yet the palace wasn't always a haven. Staff like our Maid would have seen the human side. Maybe Elizabeth snapping at an aide after a long day or sharing a rare laugh with Philip. These glimpses, though unverified, hint at a queen who was both poised and deeply human. And as the world around her changed, bigger challenges were brewing, ones that would test her like never before. The 1950s and 60s were a time of seismic shifts. The British Empire, once sprawling, was unraveling as colonies in Africa and the Caribbean gained independence. Elizabeth's role as head of the Commonwealth became central, but it wasn't easy. She had to navigate diplomatic minefields, representing a nation whose colonial past was under scrutiny. Picture her visiting newly independent nations like Ghana or Jamaica, smiling for cameras while knowing some saw her as a symbol of a fading empire. Her grace under pressure won admiration. But what happened offstage? Rumors suggest tensions flared in private, maybe heated discussions with advisors about how to handle decolonization, or strained meetings with Commonwealth leaders. A maid in the household might have overheard these moments, catching snippets of frustration or resolve. It's been said Elizabeth felt the weight of history, knowing her role tied Britain to its past while pushing for a unified future. These stories, though unverified, paint a picture of a queen caught between tradition and a world demanding change. By the 1970s, her Silver Jubilee celebrated 25 years on the throne, a moment of national pride, but the cracks were starting to show. The monarchy's image as untouchable was fading, and personal scandals were about to hit hard. What happened next would shake the palace to its core. 1992 was the year the monarchy seemed to teeter on the edge. Queen Elizabeth called it her annus horribilis, a Latin phrase for horrible year, and she wasn't exaggerating. The marriage of her son, Prince Charles, to Princess Diana was imploding, with their separation splashed across headlines. Infidelity rumors, leaked phone calls, and a tell-all book by Andrew Morton exposed raw details of their unhappiness. At the same time, Prince Andrew's marriage to Sarah Ferguson unraveled, adding more fuel to the media fire. Then, a literal blaze struck. Windsor Castle, a symbol of the monarchy, was gutted by a devastating fire. Imagine the mood in the palace. Staff like our Maid would have seen the chaos up close. Maybe Elizabeth's strained expression as she read the latest tabloid, or hushed arguments between royals. Reports claim the Queen was stoic but shaken, aware that the public was losing faith. Some say she confided in close aides about her fears for the monarchy's future. Could the Maid have witnessed these raw moments, hearing Elizabeth question how to hold it all together? These whispers, though unconfirmed, suggest a palace under siege. The year forced Elizabeth to confront a hard truth. The monarchy couldn't hide behind tradition anymore. The public wanted openness, and the media wouldn't let up. But an even bigger storm was coming, one that would test her like nothing else. August 30th, 1997 changed everything. Princess Diana, the people's princess, died in a Paris car crash, sending shockwaves around the world. The public's grief was raw and overwhelming. Flowers piled up outside Buckingham Palace and millions mourned. But the royal family's response? Silence. For days they stayed at Balmoral, shielding Princes William and Harry from the media storm. To many, it felt cold, out of touch. The press pounced, accusing the Queen of being heartless. Even the lack of a flag at half-mast over Buckingham Palace became a flashpoint. Behind the scenes, the palace was in crisis. It's been said Elizabeth wanted to protect her grandsons, but the public saw detachment. Could our Maid have overheard tense debates about how to respond? Rumors suggest staff were torn, some urging the Queen to speak, others defending tradition. On September 5th, Elizabeth broke her silence with a televised address praising Diana and speaking as a grandmother. It was a rare, emotional moment that calmed some of the outrage. But the damage was done. The monarchy had to change, fast. Diana's death exposed a rift between the royal family and a public craving connection. It also highlighted the media's power to shape narratives. And as the new century dawned, more scandals would push the monarchy to its limits. The 21st century brought no relief. One of the darkest chapters came with Prince Andrew's ties to Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted sex offender. Allegations surfaced that Andrew was involved in misconduct, claims he's denied. His 2019 BBC interview was a disaster. Critics called it tone-deaf, and public trust plummeted. By 2022, his titles were stripped, a move many saw as too little, too late. Imagine the palace's mood. Staff like our Maid might have seen Elizabeth's frustration or heard whispers of her disappointment. Some say she agonized over balancing family loyalty with public duty, though these stories remain unverified. Then came Harry and Meghan's exit. Their 2020 decision to step back from royal duties, dubbed Megxit, stunned the world. In their 2021 Oprah interview, they alleged racial bias within the royal family, including concerns about their son Archie's skin tone. Meghan also spoke of mental health struggles, claiming the palace offered little support. The revelations sparked global debate. Some saw them as exposing a rigid institution. Others felt they betrayed the Queen. Could the Maid have known how Elizabeth reacted privately? It's been said she was deeply hurt but stayed composed, a hallmark of her reign. These scandals showed a monarchy struggling to adapt. The public demanded accountability, and the press was relentless. But there was another battle brewing, one over money and history. The monarchy's wealth has always been a lightning rod. The sovereign grant, funded by taxpayers, covers official duties, but questions swirl about private fortunes like the Duchy of Lancaster. Critics ask, why so much secrecy? In recent years, calls for transparency have grown louder, with some demanding the royals justify their wealth in an era of inequality. A maid in the household might have overheard tense talks about budgets or public backlash, maybe even Elizabeth's own views on the scrutiny. Rumors suggest she was pragmatic, aware of the need to balance privilege with public goodwill. But these are just whispers. Then there's the colonial legacy. As head of the Commonwealth, Elizabeth symbolized Britain's past, but that history is fraught. Former colonies, especially in the Caribbean, have pushed for reparations and apologies for slavery and exploitation. During her reign, these debates intensified, with some questioning the monarchy's role in a post-colonial world. It's been said Elizabeth was privately conflicted, proud of the Commonwealth but aware of its painful roots. Could our Maid have caught glimpses of these discussions? These unverified stories hint at a queen grappling with history's weight. As her reign ended, these issues, money, history, and relevance shaped her legacy. So what does the Maid story mean for how we see Elizabeth now? Queen Elizabeth II's 70-year reign was a masterclass in duty, resilience, and adaptation. From a young princess thrust into the spotlight to a queen navigating scandals, decolonization, and a changing world, she held the monarchy together through sheer will. The former Maid's revelations, though shrouded in mystery, offer a tantalizing glimpse into the human side of that legacy. Was Elizabeth as stoic as she seemed, or did she wrestle with doubts and fears behind palace walls? Did she clash with family over scandals, or quietly guide them through? While we may never know the full story, these hints, framed as rumors and whispers, challenge us to rethink the monarchy's untouchable image. In a world-questioning tradition, her story reminds us that even icons are human. What part of this surprised you most? Drop a comment below and subscribe for more dives into history's biggest secrets. Let's keep the conversation going.